Okay, hi guys. Welcome to my TED Talk. Just kidding, but for real, I don't know what I'm doing here because I don't know if you saw all the other talented speakers on this lineup, from Oscar and Grammy nominated and winning artists. I think the organizers just wanted to balance it all out, keep it interesting with someone like me. I'm just like a 20-something-year-old little baby who doesn't really know much at all. I didn't even finish my degree, to be honest. I have one credit left for my Spanish class. Sorry, Mom, but I will be working on that soon. I'm here and I am very grateful. So I wanted to use this opportunity to chat about how lucky I have been in my career, and maybe some of you guys will find some of this useful as you guys go on to your postgraduate or post-college opportunities, projects, and things like that. I'd like to chat about my industry, which is mainly vintage and reselling, and most recently events and community. And I would like to bring up some interesting discourse within the industry to maybe spark discussion and answer some of your questions. I apologize in advance for all the all-overness of this presentation and any awkwardness on my part, along with social anxiety and a series of other learning and personality disorders. I have severe ADHD and have not taken my Adderall today, but I have had a nice coffee from a brand new shop somewhere over here. It's called Mind Coffee. You guys should check it out. Super good. Berkeley. I have a long history with you guys. This is an interesting, unique, and very special place to me. My grandma on my biological dad's side came here from Thailand, so we would spend Sundays at the Thai temple in Berkeley. If you know, you know, and if you don't know, you guys should definitely ask me about it in the Q&A because you should know about it. It's amazingly yummy and great. But beyond just my family, I've been spending the summers here before. When I was in middle school and high school, I do all of my back-to-school shopping and thrifting here on Telegraph. Even back then, Telegraph was always pop-in. I don't know if you guys remember, you're too young, but there was like a Buffalo Exchange and like all these other fun little boutiques. I always spent my summers here. Cool. And then I also had some kind of like interesting college experiences here. I went to school at UOP in Stockton, not too far from here, so when we would come over here for parties, they would be like the most interesting, extravagant things I've ever seen. I remember one time we were like in the Berkeley Hills in this massive mid-century modern mansion, and people were passing out like scobies for kombucha, and I just thought that was the most random Berkeley thing that I've ever seen in my life. I don't know if they still do that, but it was a very memorable time. And then lastly, Berkeley is the first ever place I decided to set down roots. After college, I chose Berkeley to start my store, and I actually lived above the store for a few years. So it's just my home. It feels good to be here. It feels very full circle to be in front of you guys talking about my career. Let's go to the next slide. So this is a representation of my mind and me. I'm just a city girl. I grew up in San Francisco, and I love like food and eating, and I'm an Aries and a Capricorn moon and Aquarius rising. I love anime. I love everything. This picture is really cute because it's my uncle in a Cal sweatshirt. I don't even think he went to Cal, so I don't know why he's wearing that. But that's an example of something that we would sell in the shop now, a 90s Cal sweatshirt. So that was kind of cute. So that's a little bit about me. Oh, my angel number is 333. Oh, and I want 7 dogs. I don't know if that's important. I have 2 now, so 2 of the 7 I have. Sorry. Okay, so these are my babies. Indigo Vintage and SoSo and Machi. Indigo is kind of like what started everything for me, I would say. There's so much to say. My heart is so full with Indigo. It's really like pivoted and started everything. But basically, when my mom was younger, we would always thrift. She was a single mom of 2 daughters. She worked retail at Nordstrom, so we didn't really have a lot of money growing up. So whatever we got, clothing, furniture, would always be at the thrift store. Me and my sisters grew up there, so I'd always grown up thrifting. I thought it was normal. I thought that's where everyone got their things from. And then as going into college or high school, realizing that maybe not everyone goes thrifting for fun or for necessities was something that I learned. One fun day I went to high school, I was wearing like a 1950s swimsuit that was like actually a dress. And some of my friends, not really my friends, but they like made fun of me for it. And that's kind of when I learned like that wasn't cool back then. Now it's cool. I'd be the coolest kid ever now, but back then it was not cool to wear old clothes. But yeah, so thrifting was always there, and then, where am I? Eventually I went to school and college. It was first generation college, and I still thrifted throughout college, things like that. And it was right outside of college when I graduated that I got my dream job at a tech company called Poshmark. It's kind of like Depop's mom, where you resell clothing, but it's not as trendy. But it was my dream job nonetheless. I was an event planner there. I was traveling the country. I was throwing super sick events. I had the dream job. So with the dream job, I feel like there were things that were like I kind of compensated for. So like maybe the pay wasn't great, but we had a lot of great perks like free clothes and catered meals. So I kind of got wrapped up into all the perks and the lifestyle of it all. I don't know what kind of the disconnect was, but I ended up getting fired only 6 months into the job. So I was devastated. I was embarrassed. It sucked. I didn't tell anyone. I was staying with my aunt at the time, and I was just doing DoorDash and Instacart to cover that $300 in rent that I was paying. And then I started thrifting more and selling clothing at Wasteland and Buffalo Exchange to cover simple living expenses like food. But while I was doing all of that, I kind of started to enjoy the solitude and the meditative work that I did by myself. I started selling at markets with my mom and kind of like humbling myself, going from this big girl job, tech job, to kind of like selling used stuff with my mom at the flea markets to make cash. It was such a weird transition. But yeah, eventually I was able to save about $2,000, which was the most money I had ever seen at that point in my life, and I bought an old used van. And then that van was my first investment into the first step into reselling full-time. But yes, so let's just fast forward. After the van, I started traveling between here and LA, selling at markets, and eventually opened my first store on Telegraph Avenue right here in Berkeley. And it was such a pretty space, and I had no money, but somehow we made it work. I signed the lease. They asked for $9,000. I didn't have $9,000. You wouldn't believe the things I did. I asked my friends. I asked people to invest, people that I never talked to. Like, I don't know how it happened or what happened to make people want to invest $500 to $2,000 at the time, but I got enough people to invest $9,000, and we started the shop. Fast forward, we opened Berkshop 2018, then we opened up our second location in 2019 in San Francisco, and then our third location in Santa Cruz in 2020. This was 3 days before the massive COVID shutdowns. A very interesting time, the first I've seen that I've been alive for, I guess, and we had to shut down all the shops. So that kind of brings us to our second little baby, which is SoSo. I say sometime in 2019 because I don't really know where the idea or what happened to stem this from, but it was definitely because of the shutdowns of the shops. We weren't, I don't know if you'll remember, but we couldn't sell indoors anymore. So we had to kind of pivot, and we created this outdoor space to sell outside. We invited the vendors that we had in store, along with a bunch of other people that had lost income, not only from our stores, but other, opportunities around the Bay Area to start selling with us. And yeah, SoSo at that time was crazy because there was nothing else to do, and you could only do things outside. So we attracted people by the masses. We had lines. People waited. I think one market people waited 2 hours to get into. Like, it was ridiculous. I was kind of like right time, right place, but also like given the circumstances was so very weird with COVID and distancing. It was such an interesting time. Thankfully, Indigo and SoSo survived from that time. We were able to reopen stores. We were able to expand SoSo into its own retail stores, and I was able to kind of move on to my next project, which brings Machi, it's kind of like, I would say, my passion project. I have always been into clothing, I've always been into fashion, so Machi was a way for me to express myself without having the need to make profit, to make money, to make other people money. It was solely just for me. I learned things that I've never learned before and were pushed in ways I've never been pushed. It was really, really, it has been a really fulfilling journey, but it's also been probably my most difficult to date. But yeah, those are my babies. I love them. They're still alive today, so please visit them. And let's see, what's next? All right, okay, this is where it gets interesting. We are going to talk about the ethos in reselling in small business. So along with like any industry that you're in, there's always going to be something good and something bad. And I feel like for me, when people say small business, it almost comes with like a heroicism that's like, wow, you're a small business pioneer, you do so good for the small business community. And I love that, and I think that there are parts of that that are true, but I also think there are parts that people don't see, which is bad. And I would like to bring them up because I think they're important to think about when you're thinking about the vintage and reselling community and the small business community. I'm going to try to go quick, but thrifting and resources, one thing that I see a lot on TikTok that is important to mention is that there is some discourse about how when there's a bunch of resellers and how the industry is growing, you're kind of taking away from the people like my mom was. When we were younger, we needed that stuff. So there's a kind of like, by me reselling today, am I taking away from the younger me of the days that needed that for school kind of vibes, you know? Like, there's definitely some discourse there. Pricing and accessibility, very same thing. As the reselling community grows, prices start to grow. You can walk into a store and see some rare vintage designer, vintage piece, I said vintage like 3 times, for like a couple $100. And then you ask yourself, if somebody had got that for like $5 at a thrift store, why is it okay to sell that item for $300? So that's something to think about. Hustle culture. I grew up in the era of girl boss, so it can be toxic. It can be, and I'm definitely someone that has leaned into that, posting stories of working late nights, early mornings, always grinding. I post like that all the time, and it is a reality of my job, but it shouldn't be glorified, and that's something that I think that not a lot of us talk about a lot. Toxic, be your own boss mentality. This one can be a little bit controversial because I think there's a lot of us that are our own bosses, and we think just because we don't have a manager or someone telling us what to do, we can do whatever we want. But I don't think that's necessarily a good mentality to have, especially when you have customers that rely on you. You have other people in the industry that look to you to set, you know, a standard and to give respect and to just be a good person. Sometimes it can get toxic where because you don't have a boss, you think that you can act a certain way and there's no consequences or repercussions. I think that can get very dangerous. Going on to the flip side of that, there are kind of like things that are hurdles, I would say, and difficulties in navigating your small business. And I would say that's like, you don't have a lot of help, you don't have a lot of resources that maybe bigger companies are accustomed to. There's obviously too a privilege and a bias that comes with these things. Maybe somebody has family that knows people that can get them into a storefront, or they grew up with money, so it's easier for them to collect investments. Along with that is the systemic sexism and racism. I have had to deal with many landlords who don't understand what vintage is, don't see the profitability in sharing our resources of a co-op model. Of when they see our numbers, they don't understand why we would want to not keep the money instead of opening up the space to other people. There's a lot of that. And then hand in hand is capitalism. I feel like this is something I feel very strongly about, and I can't recommend this book enough, along with some zines that I've been reading. How to be anti-capitalist in the 21st century. How can you be anti-capitalist when you yourself are owning 3+ shops, markets, all of these things in this capitalistic system? It's quite impossible, but there are ways you can, combat it, definitely. So that's kind of a lot of the bad, but there's also some good. I don't want to discourage anyone from starting their own small business, but I also want to, shed light on things that we might not have talked about before. But on the good side of that, we are sustainable. Buying vintage, buying used is the most sustainable way to buy something. I think all of us can see, if you've ever been thrifting, there's so much Shein and Forever 21 that are sitting in those thrift stores that no one's buying secondhand, and realistically those are just going to go to the landfills. And those clothes are made out of plastic, so they're just going to be on this earth forever and ever, and it's just going to keep this vicious cycle going. So by leaning into a reselling community and having that be a purpose of what you want to do is be sustainable, if you really believe in that, I think that is a great way to go about your business. Making a difference, offering jobs and diversity in your staff, in your team, and the people that you work with, building and creating something for other people, so when you're gone that they can, pivot off of that, and distributing the wealth, kind of going back into the capitalism thing, like you don't have to keep all the profit, you don't have to be a nonprofit, but you can distribute the profit. And then the last thing is community engagement and power, which kind of is more of getting people together and like-minded people in the same area, in the same spaces, physically or online. Piggyback off that community engagement, this is probably the biggest question I get asked. How do you get the community involved? Two simple things. Being genuine, authentic, and relatable has always been what I kind of go off of. I've always treated our social media platforms like my own. I'm not trying to fabricate a story that's not real, that's not there. Sometimes I'll often post stuff that has nothing to do with the business, but I just think is interesting, and some people might agree or disagree, but it's real, it's authentic. And then marketing to your friends. Your customers are your friends. If you don't want to be friends with your customers, then I'm sorry, but I don't know how you expect them to engage with you or create community with you. Your community and your customers, they're all the same and they're all one. And I think it's really important to desire to be friends with these people and to be open to new things that maybe you're not open to before. This slide's my most important slide. If you asked me a couple years ago what my number one advice would be, it would be to not get into business with anyone, to be selfish, and to kind of create your own path. But the last 2-3 years have taught me is that that's not true. I just have not met anyone back then that I found that a relationship with that I could trust and that respected me and that not only saw the vision that I had, but wanted to grow it, really believed in it. And the first one here, Laly, she's actually here right now. She's so sweet, so great. I met her when she was a teenager, and it's just really funny now being here now, but I saw this girl at a flea market selling, and I was like, you need to come with me, girl. You got something. And she has. She's built, from these outdoor markets we've had, she's built 3 store locations. She's brought us to her first new city in LA. She's brought her own twist onto it. She's done so many amazing, magical things that I could have never dreamed of doing, and she's so much younger than me, which is ridiculous. But age doesn't mean anything, especially in this industry. Aesha, love you. Aesha is also an example of this. She started out as a sales associate at one of my shops, and now she's my business partner. So that just shows whatever you do in your life, it doesn't matter as long as you love what you do and you kind of show up and you believe in it and you're vocal about it, you can grow and be anywhere. That's what I love about small businesses. There's no stepping ladder. You could be a sales associate one day and a business owner the next. That's fine, that's great. But yeah, this is something that just is hire people who are better than yourselves, work with people who are more talented than you, and then the rest will come. Okay, we're running out of time, so this is my last slide. Tips and tricks, just going through it real fast. Manifestation is real. I know people are astrology, whatever. Manifestation is probably the strongest tool that I've ever used within my business, down to the simplest point of I'm opening a shop in Berkeley, you guys should come visit. When I have no plans to open a shop in Berkeley, no lease signed, no prospective offers, but I just spoke it into existence. I truly believed that I was going to be opening a shop in Berkeley, and I did. And I would do that for every single project I've ever done. Me and Molly are literally delusional. We sit down together and we're just we're gonna have a tour in Europe. We're gonna be opening a store for the summer in Spain. No, we're not. Maybe not. I don't know. But speaking it out there, putting it out there, you really never know. So manifestation's real. Strike while the iron hot. There's never a perfect moment. Just don't overthink things. If you want to do it. That's fine. Open doors, but don't close them behind you. I think that's something really important. Some will say Indigo was the first co-op in the Bay Area, and now there's a ton of other co-ops. There's articles written about this. Great, I love it. I love to set an idea down. I love for someone to take it and do it better than me. That's great, because originally what did I want from that is what I got, and why wouldn't I want someone else to get the same thing? If I said no, then it was did I really even want that to begin with? Did I really not want other people within the industry to grow this sustainable industry? You kind of just have to look into that and be really, if it upsets you, why does it upset you, kind of thing. It gets better before it gets worse again. So when you're at your lowest, just know it's going to get worse. But before it gets worse, it'll probably get better. I don't know if that makes sense, but let's just say it does. This one's controversial. This is not legal advice. Ask for forgiveness, not for permission. just, everything is a scam and people are gonna get scammed, but like if you know you're getting scammed, are you really getting scammed? Being mad and upset is not main character energy. If you're mad or upset at someone, you're focusing all that energy on someone else, most likely they are the main character. So give yourself the main character energy and use any frustrations, anything that makes you upset as like a fuck 'em mentality. Like use that to bring you forward, to propel you on to the next great thing, instead of thinking about their demise and wishing them unwell. Like that's not going to do anything. That's not going to bring you any forward. You want to focus on yourself and building yourself up. This one's great. Step back and gain perspective. Leave it, come back to it. This is something I think about all the time when something is so stressful in your life and it seems like the most major thing in that moment, when in reality, it's probably not. I think of this like when you're in a crowd at a concert and you feel crushed and you feel like you can't breathe. Just leave the crowd. Just leave the crowd. Take a step back. Oftentimes you take 3 steps back and you see that this side of the crowd is crushing, but there's so much space on this side. So really it's that perspective that in that moment everything is so major when really it's not. So really just take that step back. And then the last one, if I could teach anyone anything, it's just be so unserious. Like it's never that serious in your business, in anything. I tell the kids all the time at the stores, like, they're like worried about something, and like, yes, valid, like you can be worried about that, but at the end of the day, if we have to close a shop, we close a shop. At the end of the day, all we're gonna lose is money. So it's like, the money will come, the money won't come, whatever. As long as they're safe and everybody's happy, like at the end of the day, it's fine. So just remember to not take yourself too seriously, and not, in business, not be so serious about it, because, I don't know, it just can be this thing that it's not. It can be something that is fun and you can make it something that's just for you and your team and your family to come to, and a place, I guess, like a store, that someone will get a feeling, a fun feeling. I don't know if that makes sense, but like you walk in a store and they're like dancing around. I think that's fun. I think it's more fun than going to a more serious environment. But yeah, that's kind of my spiel.
Before I start off, I want to let everyone know that we'll be having a Q&A session at the end for the audience. So if you have any questions, please save them for then. And with that said, thank you everyone for joining us here tonight, and thank you, Mel, for that wonderful presentation. It's a pleasure to have you here tonight.
Thank you.
I'd like to start off with your interest in the world of secondhand fashion. You have a background in art marketing, from attending school for fashion merchandising as well as design and visual communications. What drove you to implement your education in the secondhand clothing industry rather than mainstream corporate branding?
Yeah, that's a great question. After working at Poshmark, and my initial interest in being there was the whole reselling, I actually noticed at my time there that they started pivoting away from secondhand and more towards pushing their users to open boutiques, which they would then buy new wholesale items from overseas and push that as like their Poshmark boutique. And I always thought that didn't sit well with me during the time of working in that company. And I thought it kind of took away from the sustainability and the whole point of having a closet. So that was kind of the first like indication that, hey, maybe corporate fashion's not for you. And then, yeah, just working at Urban Outfitters, Victoria's Secret, like really big brands that, you know, that are popular and well shopped today, as a retail associate, and just seeing how from the top down, people didn't really care about, you know, their workers, their staff, or there's certain policies in place that didn't make sense. Like you couldn't clock in until like you were on the floor, but you had already arrived, and you were, you know, spending your time there doing things to prepare for your shift, but you couldn't clock in until you were on the floor. Like things like that just didn't make sense to me. I noticed those things, and then I decided, I guess, when I got fired that, you know, I don't want to go back into this industry.
Yeah, and in your presentation, with your regards to this very early interest in fashion and fashion brands, how has collaboration with different vendors and different brands through Machi and SoSo Supermarket impacted your artistic expression through your own clothing?
Yeah, that's a great question too. Machi has taught me like the fashion industry is so massive, but there's also a lot of money in it. So it's all kind of like, I don't know, like a well-oiled machine. Whereas when I started working on the ground with SoSo and different vendors and Machi with local small business designers, I started to see more of the self-expression and kind of the stuff that those bigger companies were ripping off. And through that, I always made sure, like, if I saw a trend, I always kind of did my due diligence and did, like, where did this originate from? Like, what designer started this first? And if I could, I would try to support them from the roots and from the origination of that. Oftentimes, like, there's a lot of dupes and things like that out there, but really it comes from, like, someone's Pinterest board or Tumblr page, and, like, you would be surprised at how close in proximity or how affordable those things can be. So that's why with SoSo, we really aim to provide a platform for those people to share their product with the masses when it might not be so easy to before. And I think that's important to kind of stop into the little markets and shops like that to kind of see people who are putting out their creations. But yeah, that just goes back to me and my style, shopping those people, incorporating that into my own style and making my outfits based on, interactions with these people and asking them where they get their ideas from and bringing it back to my personal style.
Yeah, and you mentioned this topic of clothing, secondhand clothing becoming increasingly more mainstream on these platforms. And in the last decade, secondhand shopping has experienced a huge surge in popularity, especially amongst Gen Z consumers. Vogue Business reports that the global secondhand market is expected to grow 3 times the rate of the overall global apparel market by 2027. What do you feel are some cultural factors that have contributed to such a rise in thrifting amongst the newer generation?
Yeah, that's a lot of information, but great information. I think there's a couple of different things that are contributing to specifically Gen Z's interest in secondhand clothing and buying secondhand. One of the things is I think we're at a point in the fashion world with social media that there's so many different styles out there and so many different trends that it can kind of be hard to express yourself in a way that's kind of more unique. And I think one of the bigger selling points for secondhand is when you find an item that's vintage or used before 20 years past, it's not being recreated right now. Someone can't go into the store and buy like 20 of them. Like, you're kind of using that item to create your own style and your own outfits in a way that's like repurposing but also enhancing your personal style. So there's that. And then I also think maybe Gen Z is just a lot more like quote unquote woke, and they realize that by buying into fast fashion is, I don't know, they'll get canceled for it or something something like that. And they kind of see that there is discourse on like buying things just to wear it once. And I think that's really special about this generation is they're really conscious of that. That's very different than like my generation, I feel like. So I'm really proud of Gen Z and I love them. So I think they're the great customer and the great audience for the stores that we've had.
Yeah, and continuing this thread of trends, as secondhand clothing becomes increasingly mainstream, as you mentioned in your presentation, there is an issue of dispossession from lower income neighborhoods as these resellers seek to resell for higher profit margins. Mm-hmm. As a consignment shop owner yourself, how do you heed these concerns and implement them in your own practices or to avoid them?
Yeah, I think that's, like I brought up, a major point that needs to be addressed in the reselling and the vintage industry. I think being transparent is 100% the best way to go. I love watching, I'm chronically online and I'm always watching TikTok videos of resellers, and one of my favorite things I've learned from even people younger than me is that they kind of have these vlogs on like where they source their items, where they're getting their items made, and I think that's the kind of thing that beyond Gen Z is going to be looking for, the transparency of where you're getting your items. For me, myself, I personally, last resort thrifting for me is more like it's for fun. Like I'll go thrifting for fun just because I like it, but it's not where I find the bulk of my inventory. I feel like for me it's important to stress that we get our inventory from the place it goes before it goes to be turned into rags or to go to landfill, and these places are called rag houses. They're all over the country, and now that there's such a increase in reselling, a lot of resellers are partnering up with these houses and saving the items before they go into whatever they were going to go into. I think that's a great way to combat like landfill, and also be mindful of like taking things from thrift stores. Also with that, because the thrift prices are so expensive, I don't see how it could be really profitable for resellers to go to thrift stores to take these items, because these items are so expensive already. And whether that has to do with the reselling in general or just the greediness of the big companies that are selling them, we don't know. But there are places like the Goodwill bins or whatever where you can buy clothing by the pound. So like maybe 10 pounds would be like, I don't know, like a couple bucks. The Goodwill bins is where the items go after the thrift stores and before they get shipped out to other countries. And when they go to other countries is where they often go into landfill, or if they don't sell in the local markets.
Thank you for your insight on that. That's really important. And on this topic of considerations that you uphold within your business, Indigo Vintage's team, the hashtag Indigo Girls, is a diverse group of individuals who reflect your brand's mission on empowering queer individuals, people of color, and women. How has this inclusive mission statement shaped your brand's identity and the customer demographic it attracts?
This kind of goes back to what I was saying about creating a space or when I was talking about how in the industry, there could be a lot of like bias and, systemic oppression, racism, and that by creating your own business, you can combat that directly by creating environments that are more inclusive, that are more welcoming. When I started my store in 2018, we were coming off the tail end of the whole, I don't know how to describe it, but like the Abercrombie and Fitch model where like you walk into a store and only the cool kids were working, they looked a certain way, you never thought you could get a job there. So after growing up with that mentality, having my own store, I realized I don't have to hire like that. I don't have to have a certain look. I can hire whoever I want. But because when I was shopping, I was so ingrained into that mentality, I almost started off like that. And it took like, a good self-reflection to realize like I'm part of the problem. So I think after reflecting on that, I've made it, like you said, our mission to hire women, to hire diverse people, to hire people with different backgrounds, and not only hire them, but give them additional income. Because retail realistically is not a livable wage, is not a livable job, at least in today's economy in the Bay Area. So right now with our Indigo Co-op, our model is that all of our employees are actually vendors in the store and they all sell. So they sell their clothes in addition to working the stores, and that gives them an opportunity for passive income and to kind of have more financial freedom to grow their own side creative projects and not just work retail as a job, but kind of like as a means to do something else they're passionate about. And then the flip side of that SoSo market, me and Laly, we literally, when we go through applications, we're making sure that we're hitting, specific requirements. We're making sure that when people come to the markets, they feel like there's size is important. I feel like online you see a lot of extra small vintage sizes, even kids' clothes sometimes. But it's like we make that a mission to make sure that we have vendors that are bringing plus size clothing. We have vendors that are bringing gender neutral clothing and not marketing it as like masc or femme. I think that's really important for just being in the Bay Area in general and being in reselling in general.
Yeah, thank you for that. And speaking on this topic of unique and individual expression, especially among clothing, all of your storefronts have locations situated in San Francisco's Haight Street, which is known for its rich fashion scene. How, if at all, has the cultural spirit of this location manifested itself into your own store's curated collections?
Specifically for Haight, that it's like Telegraph. Haight and Telegraph have always, for me at least when I was growing up, been like a mecca of self-expression. There's people on the streets singing, dancing, selling drugs, like just having this like moment that you don't really get anywhere else in the city, anywhere else in Berkeley. And to be fair, I've traveled a lot of different cities and I still don't see that kind of environment celebrated as I do see in Haight and in Berkeley. At least with our Haight shop, we definitely try to bring that into the curations in terms of like standout, fun pieces that maybe aren't as functional as like everyday wear, but maybe bring some type of like expression to an outfit, like, like fun jackets or fun statement pieces. And then we also try to pick vendors that kind of align with more out there styles instead of like more muted everyday clothing. But yeah, I guess self-expression and through clothing and through the items that we curate, it goes hand in hand with the streets that we're on and how they inspire us.
Yeah, and as a vintage designer and market organizer of SoSo, like you mentioned on Telegraph, you've likely encountered a wide range of very unique and rare pieces. Can you share with us a memorable story about a particularly remarkable vintage find or an interesting item that has passed through your markets?
Yeah. I mean, there's so many crazy things that I've like seen and had the opportunity to not only like have in the stores but also wear. I think my favorite pieces are the pieces that come to me unexpectedly through someone that, you know, had a collection over 20 years and they just walk into the shop one day and they're like, you know, for the last 20 years I've collected Grateful Dead tees, and like Haight Street, you know, is known for like the Deadheads and like everyone really being into that kind of era of music. So seeing these really rare t-shirts being brought in that not only are worth a lot of money, but just like in perfect condition, but they were so loved by that owner, and like they have a story to go with each concert. Like someone had told me the concert for this was at like Golden Gate Park and it was like $5 to go to, and I was like, that's absolutely insane, because Outside Lands just happened at Golden Gate Park and it was like $400 to go to. So just like experiencing those recollection of memories in that garment to me is like the most unique items, I would say.
Yeah, and this important of unique spirit, as we close off, I'd like to circle back to the brand's timeline that you mentioned in your presentation. So from creating Indigo Vintage in 2018 to SoSo in 2019 and Machi most recently in 2022, you seem to follow a pattern of creating new, fresh brands rather than expanding under a singular name. How do you see yourself moving forward in the future with the artistic vision of your brand's identities?
Wow, that's something that I never even reflected on. Like, there is a weird pattern there. I think it has to do with me being like an Aries and like having a bunch of projects that never get finished. But I mean, that's why I hire people like Laly, and like now we're business partners, because I kind of started SoSo, but now it's like, Laly, you grow it. Like you take it to the next step. And already, SoSo started in the Graduate parking lot, which was literally like maybe 10 cars can fit there. And now she's taken over the whole entire Telegraph. So from Dwight all the way to Bondcroft, there's just market. And that's not me. I don't even know who to talk to for that. So for her to come in and grow that to the brand to the way that it is like, I'm gonna let her do that. So I think my talent and my skill is starting the brand, and then maybe it's up to the next person to kind of bring it to what the next steps of what it could be.
I see. Thank you for sharing. We are so excited to see where your journey will take you in the world of secondhand fashion. And for the sake of time, before we move on to the audience Q&A, I'd like to do a quick rapid fire session, and it's just a series of fun questions that require very short answers.
Okay.
So, Mel, do you have a favorite clothing trend?
Sorry, I'm so bad at rapid fire. I like Japanese street style right now.
Yeah. I agree. Do you have a least favorite clothing trend?
I don't like the affliction style right now. It's like I don't know if you know, like Miss Me jeans with like the studded crosses, and like if you wear that, that's cool, but I personally don't like it.
And do you have a favorite shop for secondhand clothing besides your own, of course?
Oh my gosh, there's so many. For you guys specifically, I don't know if you've been there, but on what's the street called? Ashcon, where Talia's shop is? Piedmont? No, College in Oakland. Vendors that used to vend with us actually opened their own shop, and it's the cutest, best curated. They have great prices, and sorry, this is not a short answer, but they have like $15 racks in there, $10 racks. They're amazing. What's the name of the shop? Wardrobe Project. Sorry, there you go, Wardrobe Project.
And last but not least, most importantly, do you have a favorite fashion icon?
Yes, like archive fashion icons. I follow this page, I think it's called like Glam from Venus, and it's like all 90s runway shows, and like everything on there is golden. It's beautiful.
Awesome, thank you for sharing. And well, those were all the questions I had for you today, and if anyone in the audience has a question, this is your time to ask.
Hi, my name is Aesha, and thanks for coming. So I was wondering, you mentioned that when you need to gain perspective, you often need to step backwards. So when you do reflect, where is a safe place you go to, and or what do you do?
Awesome. Yes, thank you. A safe place, like physically or mentally?
A place to reflect.
Yes. Okay. Sorry, physically? Okay. Physically, a safe place for me, and I just love coffee, is I'll just, like if there's something going on, I'm just going to go in a coffee shop. I'm going to get my favorite iced latte, and I'm just going to sit there. And then I can reflect there. Mentally, I feel like when there's a lot going on in my mind, this might be the worst advice ever, but disassociating is like a lifesaver. Like I will literally go on TikTok for hours just to forget about whatever I was thinking about. So I guess my safe places are TikTok and coffee shops.
Yes.
Oh, hello, my name is Danny. Thank you for coming. And following that, what's your favorite coffee shop? Like
Of all time or in this areas?
Any.
Oh my gosh, that's so hard. There's so many good ones. Okay, I don't know if you've been on the one on 4th Street. It's called, what's it called? Artis. See, it's a learning disability. Artis. And they do a honey lavender latte, iced, so good, like wonderful. But then, like I said, I just went for the very first time today on Euclid. There's a new shop called Mind. Have you been? You gotta go. It's so good. It's like literally they make their own crema. So it's like you can get any coffee or matcha drink and they put the crema on top and it's like chef's kiss. But yeah, those two are my faves.
Given your like unorthodox, like, I don't know, like business and like, what's a good day in the life for you as like a small business owner?
A day in the life. So there, I guess, like, I hate how cliche it sounds, but like not every day is the same. But a typical like big work day for me would be like wake up, find my coffee somewhere. What do I do? I would maybe check in with my team because I have a bunch of group chats and I'm like, hey, what's going on? Like that kind of thing. And then I'll probably just stop by one of the stores. I can't go to all of them unless I'm like on the same street. But yeah, I'll stop by one. This actually happened to me the last time I was here. We had an event, Renegade SF, and I did that exact thing I just said, but I stopped at the event in SF, and I checked on the team, make sure everything was set up correctly, and then right after that, we had a birthday party for Hello Kitty at our SoSo market on San Francisco. So after the event, I went to the Hello Kitty birthday party and just made sure the team was all set up for that. And then went home and did like back end, like social media posts and things like that. So it's very much like stopping in, prepping, and like back end.
Yes.
Is there a piece of clothing from your childhood that you wish you could bring back?
Oh my gosh, there's so many things that we had, specifically toys. I know that's not what you meant, but like there's so many cool stuff that we had when we were little that I don't see kids like with today. I don't know if you heard the discourse on like the tween is dying, but like when I was a tween, like before I was in high school, there was all these stores like Limited to Libby Lou that catered towards that in between a high schooler and an elementary schooler, where we had like little baby tees like with like funny sayings on them that are like girls are cuter, boys are stupider, like things like that I don't see anymore. So it's like, where are those tween clothes? And like, why are now the tweens dressing like high schoolers? And I want to bring that back, you know, like that style back.
For the sake of time, this will be the last question, but.
When you dress, what is like the most pivotal aspect of your outfit?
Shoes. Like, I base all of my outfits off shoes because if you think about it, like logistically, whatever you're doing in the day boils down to your shoes. So like, if I know I'm going to be walking a lot, I'm going to be wearing like a comfortable UGG or a platform sneaker. But if I'm not going to be walking a lot, I'm going to be wearing a tall platform, a heel, a loafer, something like that. So it's definitely start my outfit with my shoes. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much for coming here, Mel. Round of applause.
Thank you, guys. That was so much fun.